Good evening, everyone. We'll begin by looking over our prayer list. We know that we have addition of Billy Henry, mentioned this morning, is in Baptist Health in Fort Smith. And also, we want to remember those that's on our prayer list that's been there a while. D. Bledsaw. I think Ruth Chambliss is doing better. I don't know if they've been out of town today or not, but we have others: Kevin Cameron, Coy Evans, Betty and Harmon Hawford, Jean and Jenny. Jenny said that Jean was not feeling well today. Kenneth and Janice Parks. Monica Whithurst was here this morning. Others, Coy Evans, others that we have: Paul Harless, Darvin Hutchins, Judy Lennon. Then we have Justin Lopez and Anna Pendergrass, Nathan Morton. Does anyone know? I know that Nathan, I think, had surgery. Yeah, saw him today. Doing better. Okay, so he's recovering. Good. They were here this morning. Good. Okay. And then there's others. Just note those on the prayer list. Like I said, there's many that's been on the prayer list for a long time, but continue to remember them. Next Sunday after morning services, we have our potluck. I did talk to Evelyn in Portland this morning. Evelyn's plans are to be leaving right after the 4th, I believe, July 4th. Marshall is going to be flying in and going with her to the airport, and they'll both be flying out to Washington as she moves there, and in Portland will be moving there as well. And so I'm sure maybe we'll mention her at our potluck next week as well. Any others that we need to mention? Yes? Mary Lou Evans. Okay. Good. All right. I know that we had a few more classrooms open this morning for the children. Some were not here, but they'll be continue to be open so that when we do have those children, that we'll have class available for them. We've ordered just a little bit of material. Pam's going to be using some of the 21st century material again, so if the others get a chance to look at that, it may be something that we can get some more packets for other age groups if we want to use some of that material as well. Some of the material we've been using for a while. All right. We need someone to lead us in a prayer following our first song, and then, of course, the closing prayer. Do we have anyone that has not had the chance to take a little Lord's Supper? So we're okay there. Got a few older songs that we're going to be singing tonight, and we've got quite a few. We're going to start off. If you'll turn to number 903, go ahead and mark to that number. 903, There's Power in the Blood. We'll be using that song after the lesson tonight. So we're going to start off with number 456. 456. There's a Rainbow in the Cloud. We'll be singing the first and last verses. And then one of the men will lead us in prayer following this. As I journey here in the Lord, and in the rainbow,
cloud. He will safely keep our atmosphere. There's a rainbow in the cloud. There's a rainbow that is shining. There's a rainbow in the cloud. Where my faith is run and the victory's won. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When the storm falls past and the brightest day, there's a rainbow in the cloud. May that city declare there's a ground is there. There's a rainbow in the cloud. There's a rainbow that is shining. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When my faith is run and the victory's won. There's a rainbow in the cloud. Give you our praise, Heavenly Father, for your blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We are so thankful for your creation, that we acknowledge that you are the creator of all things. Just thank you, Heavenly Father, for the day, for the beauty of it. Thank you for Jesus and the family, the dead, for the church, for the membership in Christ. Those that are here who are encouraged, we ask your blessing on people, especially those who are sick or disabled or various reasons for a while. We ask healing to those that are healed. And for guidance to those who are helping out of the problem. Help us be mindful of these also. Being with us to be served and listen to the word of Jesus and also to sing these songs, help us to understand the word that we are singing. Help us in our praise. Be more thankful for our Lord. Be with us as we strive to do when we look at all we are perfect. As us to sin from time to time, and do that as kids. Be with us to speak to be more loving, more understanding. Now, Jesus,
408. Blessed assurance. Sing the first and last verses of this song.
But assurance, Jesus is mine, for the Lord is your glory divine. Exaltation, praise the God, for His Spirit washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising waiting, looking up, filled with goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all day long.
Or 409. 409. Personalized verses.
When peace like a river runs into my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my heart thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul, it is well with my soul, it is well with my soul. And Lord, is the day when the rain shall beside the clouds we roll back as the scroll. The drums shall resound and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Word lesson of 535.
535. Glory Land.
I'm in the way, the bright and shining way. I'm in the glory and way. Telling the world that Jesus saved me. Yes, I'm in the glory and way. I'm in the glory and way. I'm in the glory and way. Heaven is nearer and the way grows.
Good evening. Our number is a little sparse tonight, but I know probably some are still celebrating Father's Day. Hopefully all the fathers here have had a good Father's Day. Rick and Vicky, my understanding, is not feeling well tonight. And so keep them in mind as well. All in all, good day this morning. And it was good to have, today we had tons of teachers ready, and the kids didn't show up today, but that's been unusual. You had one, okay. But like some weeks, we've had a lot of kids in the last probably month, 2 months. So we definitely need to have that ready, and so it's good to see we have those that are willing to serve in that capacity. Next week is obviously our potluck day. I'm going to make sure I put it on the sign soon. So basically remind everybody, invite anybody who wants to come. And that way Steve will remember maybe this way. Let's see the sign coming in once or twice. I may even put it on there backwards because you can actually put a different message on each side. And so I may do one where you come and say your mirror, you see it. I'll leave it the same. That'll get a little weird or something. But anyway, do love the sign. Appreciate all those that had any hand in it. We had, a lot of people were involved in some form, shape, or whatever, and so it has been, it seemed like it took a while, but not really. And so it is something that should last us for years to come. If you have any ideas, recommendation, it's easy to change, and we can do that. Won't be a lot of people that will have access to it. That's for the best. But anyway, it is easy. If you have any suggestions, the only thing that I have discovered in just my brief time, it's best for like a simple one-line message. You can do a few little things, but basically getting more than that, it's hard to either read or the pixelation is just not big enough. Also, based on the speed limit, people really couldn't read much more than one line anyway. So it really would, I feel like we probably do have the right size sign and everything. It's just, limited. It is what it should be for our situation. And so people do see it. And I was actually, yesterday when the sun was shining real bright, I was amazed at how well you could still see it. I wondered about that, whether you could see it, the light shining too much, but it will definitely, it definitely still looks good. Nehemiah chapter 4. The work is great and large. Now, normally we've been doing Nehemiah on Sunday mornings, but since we did a Father's Day lesson this morning, I thought we'd just do the Nehemiah lesson tonight. And so, Nehemiah 4. Go and turn your Bibles on to. Now, I haven't done civil engineering work in about 20 years, but is that right? Yeah, getting close to it. Getting close to 20 years now. I started preaching full time in 2004, so it's been almost 20 years since I've done any kind of serious engineering for a while. I did dabble and kind of do some double-wide inspections and everything for a little while longer, but basically it's been almost 20 years since I've done engineering, but it's hard to take that aspect, that was in me. I did a lot of education. It always fascinated me, and so at large structures, at 2,722 feet tall. Now, to put that in perspective, it's just a hair shorter than what the top of Mount Magazine would be, this one building. And it has 163 floors. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai is the world's tallest building by any measure. Sometimes I measure it based on, tallest floor, sometimes tip of tallest structure. Any way you want to measure it, this is the tallest building in the world, and it's not really even all that close. By comparison, the Burj Khalifa towers over the Willis, formerly Sears Tower in Chicago, which stands at 1,729 feet to the top of the antenna. It only has 108 floors. And, of course, there is the building that replaced the Twin Towers in New York that is basically 1,776 to the top of the antenna, but it doesn't have as many floors as the Sears Towers. So some of them get debatable as far as what's taller, but this Burj Khalifa is just like massively taller than anything else in the world. And what an amazing structure it is just to, be that tall and that big. And buildings are, and you watch videos, I like watching things of how the Empire State Building was built, how even the Twin Towers of the time. Twin Towers were an impressive feat of engineering the way they were built, and yet partly how they were built is why they were susceptible to what happened to them. It kind of had the chimney effect when the jet crashed and fuel dumped into the elevator shafts and caused it to heat up higher than something they hadn't planned for. Do you remember your first real job? I kid. Cassie was here this morning. Kenneth is Salt Lake City, I think, on business. And what a how humble to be away on Father's Day. But anyway, so he's all there in Salt Lake City, and I joked with him last time I saw Kenneth. I said, "Oh, you got you a real job now," and he's like, he does. And so he's like, I'm a full-fledged adult, I guess now. And so, when did you have your first real job? Now, I had jobs. I started working. I worked about 40 hours a week from the time I was 14 years old. Some of you may be the case. It's not really that easy to do these days if you're young. In fact, they have a lot of so-called child labor laws and things. I did it for my own, and I loved it. It was fun. But it wouldn't be for everybody. But I started working. I worked in supermarkets. I did mowed yards even before I was 14. So 14 is when I worked for someone else, but I mowed yards even before then. But 14, started working at a supermarket. And, of course, odd and end jobs as you're in high school or through college. Got out of college, went to engineering, and was a civil engineer, and that was a neat experience in that. And really the largest project I worked on, especially by dollars way signs or however you want to measure it, was a bridge that we worked on. It was a large enough bridge project that basically no one engineer did the whole thing. We were part of a 3-engineering team process. We did the road design leading up to the bridge in both ways. We did the overflow structures. We did all the surveying. And so I was involved in this project. It's the William H. Natcher Bridge. It is 4,505 feet. 5,280 is a mile. So it spans the water about a mile over the Ohio River, not too far from Owensboro, in length, including its approaches, and 67 feet wide. It is supported by cables connected to 2 identical diamond-shaped towers, each 374 foot tall. At the time of its construction, it was the United States' longest cable-supported bridge over an inland waterway. In fact, these bridges are known to engineers as cable-stayed bridges. So you have bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge, they have totally the suspension with the cables. This, however, is a modified. It's a little bit of both, and so it actually is safer, and it still can have the large spans because the span between the 2 tall towers is almost almost 4,000 feet wide. It's interesting the way it had to be done when we designed it. We had to do everything for this one tower that you see a picture of. I like it. I found a picture of the one. It is the primary tower. And so basically all the cables, it had to be built years before the rest of it was even finished design. All these cables had to be spun around it and everything because the way it holds its structure, it needed all that to be included. And so, this was a neat project. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars and other things. And it took years, and from the time of conception to the time of construction, almost 10-year process. And so anyway, I had left the firm, went to work different places, and there was a year we went to Owensboro for something, I think a concert, and so I thought I'd never seen it. It just opened up, and it won all kinds of awards. It won like engineering awards like crazy, and to me the cable stayed bridges, they're just beautiful. And so I asked Haley, I said, let's go drive on the bridge. She was like, okay. So anyway, so we drive up. It goes to Rockport, Indiana, on the other side. And so we're driving on the bridge, and I'm just like, wow, look at this thing. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. The engineering, all this stuff in there. And so we drive, coming back. I go to Haley. I said, what do you think? She goes, it's a bridge. So anyway, people are impressed with different things. But anyway, there was a lot into it. And so, it took a lot of time from the time of planning to the time of design to the time of, it had some neat features. The approach road work, we used recycled tires as our base. That was one of the first projects in the United States to ever do that. But anyway, not everybody's into this. But anyway, it was a lot of work, a lot of time, and it will carry a lot of cars now. Christians have a great work to do, and you see a picture. This is a current picture. You can tell because it's got the sign on it. And anyway, a lot was put into that, and that was a good thing. I think it's always good to have projects where members of the church have to participate. And the trend in a lot of places is we'll just hire someone to do all the work. And I think we miss out something when we don't do part of something and do part of the work. And so a lot can go around, and it gives you ownership, into whatever you do. And so we have here, it took time into this sign, took obviously financial resources. It took, searching the best deal for what we would be needing. We got the sign in, then we had to build the base, the foundation for it, and had to get it installed. I heard that was a fun experience, and get it on there. And then we had to run the electrical to, power the sign. And it's got some deep radio technology on it that connects to Wi-Fi, so you can change it anywhere in the world as long as you have internet connection. But we have work to do. And as we've talked about building the church, I want to tell you there's no better work to do than Christians to work together to build the church. And so we have an obligation as Christians. Jesus said in Matthew 28:18-20, he said, Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. And so we have an obligation to build and to grow the church. Well, how do we do it? Well, we baptize people into Christ. We baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We make disciples out of it. And indeed, we grow that way. That's how we can grow. And a lot of times we get, off track as far as what it is to be a thriving, growing church. And I want to tell you, it requires baptisms. And if you're not having baptisms on a regular basis, I want to tell you, you're not really where you need to be. Now, I want to tell you, most churches across this land, they don't have a lot of baptisms. And I'm not going to dismiss this, but most churches, what baptism they have is generally children of those members that are there. And that's good. You would hope that they'd be able to teach them. But in order to grow, we've got to get people that are inside the church. And so we've got to grow. We've got a great work to do. Nehemiah chapter 4, 1-6. Of course, all these people come together. They were ready to build. Nehemiah told certain people, no, you're not part of this. And so in verse 1 it says, now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And he said in the presence of his brothers and of the army of Samaria, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish and burned ones at that? Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him and said, yes, what are they building? If a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads and give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your presence, from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders. So he built the wall, and the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to war. Now, the world mocks us, and they do it in a lot of different ways. The first time I heard of this individual named Dan Brown, he runs an organization, and they're based out of Wisconsin, Madison. I went up on an engineering seminar, learned about bridges, and learned about erosion and problems with bridges and how to better stabilize them. And I was up there, and it was a unique experience. Beautiful city. Weird town. That's all I can say. You walk down the streets, I didn't have much to do after the seminars were over, and I walked down the streets, and I thought I was back in the 60s. You had people playing the bongo drums and other things, and it just looked out of decades, in my opinion. And then I went to I want to date myself a little bit. I went to, where they had us put up. It was kind of like a quasi-dorm room type situation. And I turned the TV up. I had a local access channel. I thought, well, this is interesting. You get to see what this place is really like. And the first thing I saw, it was a city council meeting from Madison, Wisconsin. This guy gets up, grown man, probably in his 30s or 40s, and he gets up there and he starts just crying. I mean, it was just what's going on? And they were talking about to renovate and enlarge the Civic Center that was in Madison, Wisconsin. And so, anyway, so he's just crying and he's just giving this impassioned speech. And then I figured out what he's talking about. There was a tree that would have to be cut down in order to expand this Civic Center. And he was crying over the loss of this tree and how, it would just hurt so many people and all this. And I'm like, well, this is a different place, And then the program goes on after it. I'll never forget. It was an atheist show. Okay. Well, I know I'm not in the South anymore. And it was Dan Brown. And he was making fun of Christians. Now, this same Dan Brown's the one that we used to bully schools and other things. Send letters if you have a prayer before a football game or something like that, we're going to see you. And a lot of schools stop. In fact, to this day, a lot of schools that don't do prayers just because Dan Brown threatened them and they took it. I always talk about universities as well. The University of Tennessee basically told them, go ahead and sue. We'll see you later. And they kept doing the same thing. But anyway, Kyle Butt would later debate it. But they mock us. They say, sadistic God, useless savior, 30,000 versions of truth, promotes hate, calls it. And so they take out billboards in a lot of cities and do this. Now, more recently, we have, the whole Target fiasco, and they hired a guy to do a clothing design for the Pride things, and one of the shirts he designs, and my understanding this wasn't actually at the store, but you can get it from him through the same thing. Satan respects programs. I'll tell you all you really need to know about the whole endeavor that's out there, but it's mocking Christians. Satan was a created being that's been cast out. Satan is a being that's destined for hell himself. In fact, hell was designed for Satan and his disciples. Satan is not an entity of love. Satan is an entity of hate. Satan's the father of lies. The world mocks us. These Jews were mocked. This wall is going to fall down. They laughed about it. Sanballat, these others, they were angry because these Jews were actually different. I want to tell you, if a church really, truly gets on fire and puts their mind to work and does things, you will get some blowback from people in the community that basically won't be happy. All these Christians are self-righteous, they want to do this and that, and they will try to make fun. That's okay. We have the example of Nehemiah and his bunch. They had a mind to work. They were angry. Better probably word be wroth. It means to blaze up of angry. Indignation means extreme anger mingled with contempt, disgust, or abhorrence. The world hates us. Jesus said, that's the way it's going to be. The world hated him. It's going to hate us. We shouldn't be surprised by it. And what we can't do is try to somehow negotiate with the world and say, well, how about if we don't do this but do that? Okay, that sounds good, but then the whole timeline keeps changing. We see this in a lot of the denominational world, where they continue to have problems and problems because they try to appease society and the world at the same time trying to say that they want to believe in Jesus. Can't have it both ways. Out of his anger, Sanballat mocks God's people. The world mocks Christianity. There's all kinds of things. I actually have this DVD, Ben Stein Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed in it. It documents how in the world of academia, in the U.S., it's interesting that the only place in the world where this is the case, but in the U.S., you're not allowed to explore things like intelligent design, i.e., that there's a God, a creator that created all things. In the World Academy, you cannot discuss this. But yet, it makes fun of the fact that all these things, where do we come from? And it does also do some things that people are just dishonest about things. Most of the intellectually honest scientists do not believe in a Big Bang. It just doesn't work. It violates too many laws of physics. And if you talk to them, they'll admit that. In fact, some of the leading atheists in the world, they'll say, well, we don't believe that happened. Obviously, it violates too many things. We're not sure. Well, what do you think? What's your best guess? Ben Stein would ask in this interview, and he talks to some people that consider the smartest people in the world, and they say, well, we believe aliens came and planted the seed of life. And of course, Mr. Stein asks the question then, where did these aliens come from? And they don't know what to say. Well, it had to be some type of organic evolution that created them. And yet all this is rather funny if you think about it. Much of the people in this world that want to believe in atheism and other things, they would rather believe in little green men somewhere came and made life here instead that there's an all-powerful God, which we have all kinds of evidence. The world mocks Christianity, and Dan Brown a number of years ago came up with the book Da Vinci Code, sold all kinds of millions and millions of copies. Made a great, movie where it made a lot of money and everything. Tom Hanks was a big star. And yet, this movie, this book, is really nothing but evil. It mocks Christianity. In the book, it is said, that is the definition of faith. Now listen to how Dan Brown defines faith. And the world wants to twist these around to where they can make fun of us. Say, look, this is what faith is. It's the acceptance of that which we imagine to be true, which we cannot prove. Every religion describes God through metaphor, allegory, and exaggeration, from the early Egyptians through modern Sunday school. Is that really what faith is? There's a lot of things we exhibit faith that this would not fit. If you go somewhere and you turn light switches on, you have faith that when you flip that switch, there's electrical current flowing through there, and it gets to the light and it comes on. You don't even doubt it when you turn that switch, unless it shoots or something. You like this, it's going to come up. Can you see the electricity? No. You know what's there. And in fact, there's even some debate exactly how all that works, but yet we know it does work. It does. The light will come up, and that's good. But that wouldn't fit this definition of faith, would it? The Bible gives a lot better definition of what faith is, especially when it comes to how we believe in God. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. I've heard people paraphrase it. It's basically being sure of things you can't see. But it's not a blind faith. It's not void of any evidences. It's fact, we have so many evidences. We're convicted in our hearts that it must be true. That assurance, hypostasis, a setting under a solid foundation. We are sure in it. It's not because we can't, that we can't prove it. Well, we've got evidences. We know it to be true. We can't see God, but we know He exists from the evidences that we have. There are others like James Cameron, that basically, he did the Titanic, did the Avatar movies, and he also did this documentary. And he professed almost to be kind of like a historian. He did the Titanic, thinks he's a history buff now, and history, expert. So he did the saying on the lost tomb of Jesus. Tried to say it was actually Jesus' bones. Jesus didn't raise from the dead. His bones was found in this tomb. And I want to tell you, archaeologists and scholars, historians laughed at him. And they called James Cameron a pseudo-historian. Now, a lot of people say, oh, that doesn't not too bad. Just, a lot of people maybe they think, well, that means that he's kind of like, he's really into it. He don't have the degree training in history, but he really is passionate about history. No, that's not what it means. Pseudo means false or fake. So he's not a true historian. He's fake because he does things to make it to his what he wants. You see, in the Scripture, it talks about pseudo things. Think about it. It says pseudo-adelphus, that's a false brother. Pseudo-apostles, false apostles. Pseudo-martyria, false witness. Pseudo-prophetes, false prophet. Pseudo-Christus, a false Christ. And on and on. Those are bad things. And so indeed there are people out there, they really are not experts in what they say, and they lie. They make fun of Christianity. We can be sure of that. You see, God will not be mocked like this picture. I don't know. I don't think I ever had any professors where I would have done that thing. But anyway, people like to make fun of things. Sad truth is, Scripture says in Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Now, a lot of times we want this to happen instantly. With God, there really is no time factor. They will have to pay for their actions. So what should we do? Well, let's turn to God. Nehemiah 4:4, Nehemiah says, hear, O our God, for we are despised. Can we not say that today? Much of the world despises us for who we are, especially this month. We are considered intolerant. Turn back their taunt on their own heads and give them up to be plundered in a land for their captors. See, when we are troubled, we can turn to God. 1 Peter 5:7 says, casting all your anxieties on Him because He cares for you. Whatever your troubles are, I want to tell you, if you've done all that you can, don't worry about the rest. Give to God. God's the only one that can take care of you. Who do we trust? I hope we can say we trust in God. On our money, you take out a coin, you take out a dollar bill, or any kind of denomination, it'll say on it, in God we trust. Now, I don't know that we could ever say, as a whole country, that was ever really the case. But there was a good number of people that used to be true. I don't know that we really truly do this anymore, but do we trust in God? We could argue that the world does not, and even the society, even the American society, which was based on a Christian culture, really doesn't truly trust in God. But as a church, we should be known to trust in God. Psalms 25:1-3 says, to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust in you. Let me not be put to shame. Let not my enemies exult over me. Indeed, none who wait for you shall be put to shame. They shall be ashamed for wantonly treacherous. Paul writes in Romans 8:31-32, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also with Him graciously give us all things? As a result, Nehemiah says in verse 20, in the place where you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there, our God will fight for us. Ultimately, our God will fight for us. Now, like I say, it won't be a direct thing anymore, but one day our God does fight for us. Our God fought for us. In fact, He sent His Son that He might die for us. And indeed, nothing can separate us from the love of God. We must work with a great fervor. That's something that we must do. We must work hard. We must work together. And, it's things that it's not easy all the time. But we must be willing to work. We must teach our young to work. And so in verse 6 it said, so we built the wall, and the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Far too often in our churches these days, we went to the model where, well, that's the preacher's job, that's the elder's job, that's the deacon's job, that's the Bible class teacher's job. And I want to tell you, we will never get back to growing as a church as we should until we as the whole have a mind. If a church today just had a willing mind, it would make a difference. Now, can you say it would lead to tremendous number change? Well, you can't do that. I dare say Noah and his 8, they had a mind to work, and yet they had little results the way we look at it. But I want to tell you, we'd be sound, we'd be strong, and I believe in our community we would indeed grow in America. the church at Macedonia, Paul was trying to tell the Corinth church how they need to have a giving attitude, giving heart. And it's really not about the money. And a lot of times, I know when churches, a lot of times when a sermon is done or a lesson is done about giving, people almost get offended by it. But the fact of the matter is, it's never about money. It's about giving yourself first. What was so great about the churches in Macedonia? They were poor, but yet what they did in 2 Corinthians 8:5, it says, "And this not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then by the will of God." Give themselves to the Lord. Are you willing to do that? Sometimes we must fight for our beliefs. And I want you to think about that, ponder on this question here. When is the last time you stood up publicly for Christianity? That's the last time. Maybe you prayed in a public place, like before your meal. Maybe you did something. I'm so glad, like in the state of Arkansas, abortion is no longer the way, and it's no longer allowed, but yet there's still a lot of places where it is. There's a lot of things, when's the last time you fought for your rights? Maybe at a workplace setting where someone brings up something about Christianity. Maybe someone makes fun of Christians. Maybe whatever it may be. When's the last time you publicly stood up for Christians? In Nehemiah 19-23, there it says, "And I said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, the work is great and widely spread, and we are separated on the wall, far from one another. In the place where you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us. Our God will fight for us, or in process of possibly being attacked." So we labored at the work, and half of them held the spears from the break of dawn until the stars came out. I also said to the people at the time, "Let every man and his servant pass the night within Jerusalem, and that they may be a guard for us by night, and may labor by day. So neither I nor my brothers nor my servants nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us took off our clothes. Each kept his weapon at his right hand." They were serious about getting this wall built. Even though they were threatened, and they were threatened with people possibly coming in and attacking them, they set up a system where half guarded, half worked. They worked round the clock. It's been part of something that you had to work that hard. Maybe it's something that was, very important. You see people like during times of great floods or other things where they'll build up, with the sandbags and other things to try to keep flooding from occurring, and they'll all be working together. Maybe there's has to be an earthquake and it comes down buildings and everything. You see all these people, en masse in there trying to get all the debris out to try to rescue people. They'll do it night and day. The early church, you ever thought about it? Sunday, for the most part, many of us are off of work. We don't have to work on Sundays, depending on the type of job you have. And how leisure it is. In fact, a lot of people will use Sunday to do things that they really should be at church instead of doing them. The early church, Sunday was not a day off by any means. Most people had to work on Sundays. According to historical records, the early church would get up early in the morning and come together and they'd worship together. Then they'd go to work. They'd work 8, 10, 12-hour days. Then you know what they did when they got off work? They went back to worship together some more. They wanted to be with each other as much as possible. They wanted to be with Christians. And they wanted to do the work that was necessary. The work is great and large. Matthew 9:37-38 says, "Then he said to his disciples, The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." I want to tell you, I don't think this has ever changed. I think we've got a lot of work, and few people will do the work. We need to pray for help. Are you a servant of Christ? Basically, a slave of Christ. A Christian. The servants must work. We must be willing to work hard. We must be united. We can't let distractions occur. We can't let things that disputes and this, bother us. We've got to have the mindset, this wall must be reached. this great church. I want to tell you the first step to growing the church is to have Christians. Baptize them into Christ. Now, I'm not aware of anyone here that fits necessarily, but if you're not a Christian, if you've not been baptized in Christ for the remission of sins, why not do that? The day of Pentecost, Peter said to them, repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ, for the remission of your sins, shall receive forgiveness. Or maybe you're here, maybe you've not been as dedicated as you should to the work, to your job responsibility, to go into the world, to be that light set on the hill. Maybe you've done things that you need to make a public repentance of this very evening. Maybe you just need prayer to the church. Whatever your need may be, come now, says Amos.
Jesus, your King, there's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily in praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood. I'm satisfied with a cross below, a little silver, gold, but in that city shine. I want to go that silver line. I'd rather mention just over the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never roam. And someday yonder we'll never wander, but walk the streets that are beautiful.
We got into this wonderful day that He's given us. Thanks for allowing us to be able to come together and study another portion of His Word. We pray that you be with all those that are in our thoughts and our prayers. We be with all those that are sick and you give them a quick recovery. We be with all those that were able to make it here tonight, especially those that chose not to be with us here tonight. Speak to us throughout this week and each verse of our lives is able to encourage us to have the discipline to be fully obedient to your word and to be alive in this world. Forgive us for our weak faults, Lord.